Some stories are harder to tell than others. This one. This one has kept me awake countless nights, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, wondering if I could have done something differently. My name is Michael Chin, and I'm a 44-year-old software architect in Seattle. What I'm about to share isn't just my story, it's a warning about how the people we trust most can orchestrate the perfect betrayal. I still remember that rainy Sunday morning in October when everything in my life still made sense. I was in my home office, the one with the view of the evergreen trees that my daughter Sophia always said looked like soldiers standing guard. The family photo on my desk caught the weak autumn light, me, my wife Amanda, and Sophia at her sweet 16 last year, all of us smiling against the backdrop of Mount Rainier. The memory of that day feels like it belongs to someone else now, a happy family that existed in another timeline. The house was unusually quiet that morning. The kind of quiet that makes your skin prickle with unease. Usually, I'd hear Sophia's music floating down from her room, or the sound of her FaceTiming with her friends, or Amanda cooking something in the kitchen while listening to her favorite true crime podcasts. But that morning, nothing. Just the soft patter of rain against the windows and the hollow echo of emptiness. I remember absently rubbing my left ring finger, still not used to the absence of my wedding ring after 20 years of marriage. The tan line was finally starting to fade, but the weight of its absence felt heavier than ever. My coffee had gone cold on my desk, untouched, just like the dozens of attempted messages to my daughter that sat unanswered in my phone. The last year had been a blur of pain and confusion. It started with finding those messages on Amanda's phone, the ones that shattered our 2-decade marriage into pieces so small I'm still finding the shards embedded in my heart. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to take a shower. I wasn't snooping, I've never been that kind of husband. The message just popped up on her screen, "Miss you already? Last night was amazing." From someone named Mark W., with a heart emoji. My hands had started shaking as I stood there, the morning light suddenly feeling too harsh, too exposing. The message preview showed just enough to make my stomach turn, but not enough to explain away as something innocent. I remember the sound of the shower running upstairs, Amanda humming some pop song, completely unaware that our life together was about to implode. I didn't confront her immediately. Looking back, maybe I should have. Instead, I spent the next week in a daze watching her go about our normal routine. Making breakfast, kissing me goodbye as she left for her marketing firm, texting me about dinner plans, all while carrying on with her other life. Her life with Mark. The pain of discovering Amanda's affair was bad enough. Finding out it had been going on for 7 months was worse. But what came next? That was something I never could have prepared for. Not in a million years. When I finally confronted Amanda, showing her the evidence I'd gathered, because by then I'd found much more than just that one message, she didn't even try to deny it. She just sat there at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd had family dinners for 17 years, and said, "I guess we should talk about divorce then." Just like that. As if 2 decades of marriage, of building a life together, of raising our daughter, could be dismissed with a single sentence. The worst part wasn't even her coldness, it was the relief in her voice. Like she'd been waiting for this moment, planning for it. Sophia was 16 then, just starting her junior year of high school. She'd always been daddy's little girl, the kind of daughter who'd rather spend Friday nights having movie marathons with me than going out with friends. We had our own language of inside jokes, our special Saturday morning pancake ritual, our shared love of astronomy that led to countless nights in the backyard with our telescope, mapping the stars while Amanda called us nerds from the kitchen window. When I told Sophia about the divorce, about her mother's affair, she hugged me so tight I could feel her heart beating against my chest. "I'm here for you, Dad," she whispered, and in that moment I thought that maybe, just maybe, we'd get through this together. I had no idea that Amanda was already setting her plan in motion. No idea that those were the last normal moments I'd have with my daughter for almost a year. No idea that the woman I'd loved and trusted for 20 years was about to orchestrate the most devastating betrayal imaginable, not just against me, but against our own daughter. The custody battle started almost immediately. Amanda's lawyers were aggressive, pushing for full custody despite Sophia's age. I couldn't understand it. Sophia had always been closer to me, had always chosen my company over her mother's. But something had changed. Something I couldn't see yet. It happened so gradually at first that I barely noticed. Sophia started spending more time in her room when she was at my house. Our movie nights became less frequent. She stopped joining me for our backyard astronomy sessions. When I'd ask her what was wrong, she'd just shrug and say she was tired or had homework or wanted to be alone. Then came the day that still haunts me. We were sitting at the kitchen table, going over the custody arrangement options with our lawyers, when Sophia suddenly spoke up. Her voice was different, harder, colder than I'd ever heard it. I want to live with Mom. Full time. The room went silent. I stared at my daughter, trying to understand what was happening. Her eyes, usually so warm and full of life, looked right through me as if I were a stranger. Amanda sat there with a concerned expression that I now know was completely rehearsed, playing the role of the supportive mother perfectly. "Sophia," I started, my voice cracking. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" She wouldn't look at me. I think it's better this way. Mom needs me more." That was just the beginning of my nightmare. What I didn't know then, what I wouldn't discover for almost another year, was that Amanda had already been working for months to turn our daughter against me. But that story deserves its own telling. And believe me, it gets much, much worse. Hashtag the ultimate betrayal, how my ex-wife destroyed our family, a father's story, part 2. The next few months felt like living in a parallel universe where everything I thought I knew had been turned upside down. Every attempt to reach out to Sophia was met with either silence or brief, cold responses. Our relationship, once filled with warmth and understanding, had become a wasteland of unanswered texts and rejected calls. I remember standing in Sophia's room after she moved in with Amanda full-time. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it, her astronomy posters still covering the walls, her collection of sci-fi novels still perfectly arranged on the bookshelf, the small telescope I'd given her for her 15th birthday still positioned by the window. The room felt like a museum of what we'd lost, preserved in painful detail. My hand trembled as I picked up the framed photo on her nightstand, a picture of us at the Space Needle during her 13th birthday. We both had identical goofy grins, our matching NASA t-shirts making us look like the ultimate father-daughter nerd duo we were. A wave of nausea hit me as I realized how far we'd fallen from that moment of pure happiness. The custody arrangements were brutal. Despite having visitation rights, I barely saw Sophia. Every time I tried to visit her at Amanda's new downtown condo, I was met with excuses or outright hostility. "She's studying. She's not feeling well. She's out with friends." The doors, both literal and metaphorical, kept closing in my face. One particularly painful incident stands out. It was Sophia's birthday, and I'd waited outside her school with her favorite caramel macchiato and a small gift, a rare first edition of Contact, by Carl Sagan that I'd spent months tracking down. When she saw me, the look on her face wasn't just disappointment or anger, it was fear. She hurried past me, mumbling something about being late, leaving me standing there with a cooling coffee and a wrapped book that represented everything we used to share. My lawyer suggested fighting for enforced visitation, but I couldn't bear the thought of forcing Sophia to spend time with me. Whatever was happening, whatever had changed, I didn't want our relationship to be reduced to a legal obligation. The thought of seeing that fear in her eyes again was more than I could handle. What made it all more bewildering was that I knew, or thought I knew, that Amanda had been the distant parent. She'd missed soccer games for work meetings, forgotten about science fairs, dozed through movie nights when she bothered to join us at all. How had she suddenly become the parent Sophia couldn't bear to be away from? The answer came during a chance encounter with Amanda's assistant, Rachel, at a local coffee shop. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, and I almost let her pass without saying anything. But something in her expression made me reach out. "I'm sorry about everything," she said, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "The way Amanda's handling this, it's not right." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" Rachel glanced around nervously before sitting down. "I've seen the text she sends Sophia. The things she says about you. Michael, she's been systematically poisoning Sophia against you for months." The coffee turned to acid in my stomach as Rachel explained. Amanda had been showing Sophia carefully selected text messages and emails, stripped of context, painting a picture of me as controlling and emotionally abusive. A concerned text about her driving in a snowstorm became evidence of my obsessive control. An argument about her flirting with my best friend at a Christmas party was twisted into proof of my dangerous jealousy. "She has a whole folder on her phone," Rachel continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "She calls it her insurance policy. She's been planning this for longer than you know." I felt the room spinning as Rachel described how Amanda would send Sophia articles about emotional abuse, subtly suggesting that she might recognize the patterns in my behavior. How she'd started therapy sessions for Sophia with a counselor who was only hearing Amanda's carefully curated version of events. How she'd orchestrated every detail of Sophia's alienation from me with the precision of a military campaign. The worst part? Amanda had been recording all our arguments during the last year of our marriage, but only the parts where I raised my voice in frustration or said things in anger. Never the parts that showed her gaslighting, her manipulation, her subtle provocations designed to push me to my breaking point. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Rachel, my voice hoarse. Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I have a daughter too. And what Amanda's doing, it's evil. She's not just hurting you, she's hurting Sophia in ways that might take years to heal." I left that coffee shop with my world transformed yet again. The pieces were finally falling into place. The sudden change in Sophia's behavior, the fear in her eyes when she saw me, the way she'd repeat Amanda's exact phrases when explaining why she didn't want to see me. My daughter hadn't just been turned against me, she'd been systematically programmed to fear and reject me. But knowing the truth was one thing. Fighting it was another matter entirely. How do you combat a poison that's been slowly dripped into your child's mind for months? How do you prove emotional manipulation when it's been so carefully orchestrated to leave no traces? I spent nights poring over old text messages, emails, photos, anything that might help me understand the full scope of Amanda's manipulation. The more I looked, the more patterns I saw. Little comments she'd made to Sophia over the years, subtle ways she'd undermined my parenting decisions, small seeds of doubt she'd planted long before the affair came to light. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. No one could have been prepared for the depths Amanda would sink to in her quest to erase me from our daughter's life. And as I would soon discover, the affair and the manipulation were just the beginning of her elaborate plan. #The ultimate betrayal, how my ex-wife destroyed our family, a father's story, part 3. Then came the day that changed everything. A rainy Seattle afternoon that started like any other but ended up rewriting our entire story. I was in my home office, drowning myself in work as I'd done for the past year, when the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the empty house, and for a moment I just sat there, not expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my heart stopped. Sophia stood there, soaked from the rain, a backpack clutched to her chest. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, and her eyes, those eyes that had looked through me with such coldness for months, were filled with tears. Before I could say anything, she launched herself into my arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "I'm sorry, Dad," she choked out between sobs. "I'm so sorry." We stood there in the doorway, the cold rain soaking us both, but neither of us moved. I held my daughter like she might disappear if I let go, feeling her tears soak into my shirt. The weight of her in my arms felt simultaneously foreign and achingly familiar, like finding something precious you'd thought was lost forever. When we finally made it to the living room, Sophia could barely speak through her tears. I made her hot chocolate, the same way I used to when she was little, with extra marshmallows and a sprinkle of cinnamon, and waited. The mug trembled in her hands as she took small sips, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. "Everything's exactly the same," she whispered, her eyes landing on the family photo above the fireplace. "I thought, Mom said you'd changed everything." That was just the first of many lies Sophia would uncover that day. As she slowly began to talk, the full extent of Amanda's manipulation unfolded like a horror story. It wasn't just the out-of-context text messages or the carefully edited arguments. Amanda had created an entire alternate reality for our daughter. She told Sophia that I'd been secretly gambling away her college fund. In reality, I'd been adding to it monthly even after losing custody. She claimed I'd been stalking Amanda at work. The only time I'd been near her office was when she'd asked me to drop off divorce papers. She even suggested that my late-night coding sessions were actually me planning ways to hurt them both. But what finally broke the spell was something so small, yet so significant. Sophia had overheard Amanda on the phone with her cousin, who was going through her own divorce. "Just do what I did with Sophia," Amanda had said. "Show her the texts out of context. Plant the seeds. Make her think it was all his idea to stay away. Trust me, it works like a charm." Sophia's voice cracked as she recounted this. "It was like waking up from a nightmare, Dad. Everything just shifted. All these things Mom had told me about you, all these patterns she'd pointed out. Suddenly I could see what she'd done. How she'd twisted everything." She pulled out her phone and showed me the folder her mother had created. Dozens of screenshots, recordings, and notes, all carefully curated to paint me as a monster. But now, looking at them with clear eyes, Sophia could see the manipulation. A text asking her to call me when she got home safely became evidence of controlling behavior. A father-daughter lunch date became an attempt to manipulate her away from her mother. "She had spreadsheets, Dad," Sophia said, her voice hollow. "Actual spreadsheets tracking what stories to tell me when, what articles to send me about toxic fathers, what triggers to use. She planned it all like some kind of psychological warfare." The methodical nature of Amanda's manipulation was staggering. She hadn't just acted on emotion or impulse, she'd orchestrated every detail, planned every move, predicted every reaction. She turned our daughter's trust and love into weapons against both of us. As Sophia continued to talk, more pieces fell into place. The sudden therapy sessions with a counselor who was only hearing Amanda's version of events. The coincidental articles about emotional abuse that would appear in Sophia's social media feed. The way Amanda would subtly reinforce the narrative by having her friends and family members mention how different and concerning my behavior had become. I started having panic attacks, Sophia admitted, staring into her now empty mug. Every time I thought about seeing you, my chest would get tight. Mom would say it was my body warning me about danger, but now I realize she created that fear. She planted it and nurtured it until it grew into something that felt real. The revelation about the panic attacks hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been suffering through the loss of my daughter, she'd been suffering through the loss of her trust in her own judgment, her own memories, her own feelings. But the worst was yet to come. As we sat there, piecing together the extent of Amanda's deception, Sophia's phone kept buzzing with messages from her mother. Each one more urgent than the last, each one playing on the same emotional triggers Amanda had cultivated for months. Where are you? I'm worried sick. You know how your father gets. Please come home. I'm calling the police if you don't answer. Sophia turned off her phone, her hands shaking. She always does this. Makes everything seem like an emergency, like I'm in danger if I'm not with her. But Dad. She looked up at me, her eyes clear for the first time in months. I'm not going back. I can't live with her lies anymore. What happened next would test both of us in ways we never expected. Amanda's reaction to losing control would reveal just how far she was willing to go to maintain her carefully constructed narrative. And the truth about her supposed financial struggles? That would turn out to be the most twisted part of all. Hashtag the ultimate betrayal, how my ex-wife destroyed our family, a father's story, part 4. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings and emotional conversations. I contacted my lawyer immediately, explaining the situation and sharing the evidence Sophia had gathered. The manipulation, the psychological abuse, the calculated destruction of our relationship. It was all documented in Amanda's own words and files. But Amanda wasn't going down without a fight. Her response to Sophia's departure was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd spent months crafting false narratives. She created another one. Within hours of Sophia turning off her phone, Amanda was at the police station, painting a picture of a manipulative father who had brainwashed her daughter. She'd crafted her story carefully, using the same techniques she'd used against me all along, taking small truths and twisting them into something sinister. Thankfully, Sophia was 17 now, old enough for the police to listen when she calmly explained that she'd left of her own free will. She showed them the spreadsheets, the manipulated screenshots, the calculated plan her mother had executed over months. The officers' faces changed as they realized they weren't dealing with a custody dispute, but with something far more disturbing. Then came the custody modification hearing. Amanda arrived looking every bit the part of the concerned mother, designer outfit slightly rumpled, eyes red from crying, clutching a tissue in her manicured hands. But something was different this time. The mask was slipping. I can't afford to fight this anymore, she announced dramatically in front of the judge. I've lost my job, I'm struggling financially. Maybe it's better if Michael takes full custody. My lawyer and I exchanged glances. This sudden surrender seemed too easy, too convenient. But it wasn't until I met my old college friend James for coffee that the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Michael, he said, sliding his phone across the table. You need to see this. On his screen was Amanda's Instagram profile, one I couldn't see because she'd blocked me months ago. There she was, on a luxury yacht off the coast of Greece, champagne in hand, wrapped in the arms of Mark, her affair partner. The post was dated 3 days after she'd claimed in court that she was struggling financially. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through the photos. Amanda living it up in 5-star resorts, shopping at luxury boutiques, planning her new life with Mark. All while telling the court she couldn't afford to keep custody of her daughter. There's more, James said quietly. Look at the dates. The timestamps told the real story. The very day she'd signed away her parental rights, crying crocodile tears in the courthouse about her financial struggles, she'd been posting about her upcoming Mediterranean cruise. She hadn't lost her job at all, she'd quit, choosing a child-free life of luxury over her own daughter. When I showed Sophia the photos, I expected her to break down. Instead, she laughed, a hollow, sad sound that broke my heart all over again. You know what's funny, Dad? she said, staring at the images of her mother living it up in Greece. She used to tell me you were the narcissist. But she's the one who threw away her own daughter for a vacation lifestyle. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. My lawyer suggested we could pursue charges for parental alienation, even fraud given her false claims about financial hardship. But Sophia surprised me with her wisdom. I don't want to drag this out, she said one night over our reinstated family dinner. She's shown us who she really is. Fighting her will just keep her in our lives longer. She was right, of course. Amanda had orchestrated her entire exit from motherhood as carefully as she'd orchestrated turning Sophia against me. The financial struggles, the tearful courthouse surrender, it was all part of her plan to escape responsibility while maintaining her image as the victim. The most painful part? When confronted with the evidence of her lies, Amanda didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she sent Sophia a text that perfectly encapsulated who she really was. I hope someday you'll understand that everyone has to live their own truth. Their own truth. As if truth was something you could customize to fit your vacation plans. Recovery hasn't been easy. Sophia still has nightmares sometimes, still struggles with trust issues and anxiety. We're in family therapy, working through the layers of manipulation and lies that nearly destroyed our relationship. But we're healing, day by day, movie night by movie night, telescope session by telescope session. Last week, I found Sophia in her old room, going through her childhood photos. She was removing them from their frames, carefully sorting them into two piles. When I asked what she was doing, she showed me. One pile had Amanda in the photos, one didn't. I'm not throwing away the ones with her, she explained, seeing my concerned expression. I'm just putting them in perspective. Those smiles, that happiness, it was real for us, even if it wasn't for her. That's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't just hurt in the moment. It reaches back through time, questioning every memory, every shared moment of joy. But Sophia's right. Our happiness was real, even if Amanda's was an act. As for Amanda? Last we heard, she's still island hopping with Mark, living her best life, according to her social media. She occasionally sends Sophia impersonal birthday and Christmas cards, always signed "Best Wishes, Mom," as if she's a distant aunt rather than the woman who gave birth to her. But we're done letting her absence define us. Sophia's heading to college next fall. She got into the astrophysics program at Caltech, her dream school. The same college fund Amanda claimed I'd gambled away? It's fully intact, with a bit extra from all those months I didn't have to pay for her living expenses. More importantly, our relationship is stronger than ever. Different, yes, we both carry scars from Amanda's manipulation, but stronger. We've learned that sometimes the people who should love us the most are capable of the deepest betrayals, but we've also learned that real love, honest love, can survive even the most carefully orchestrated deception. Tonight, like most nights now, Sophia and I are planning another backyard astronomy session. The forecast is clear, perfect for stargazing. As we set up the telescope, I catch her smiling, that same goofy grin from our old Space Needle photo. Some things, it seems, can't be poisoned by lies or bought off with luxury vacations. Some bonds are simply unbreakable.